to start recording this. And then I think if we can share that one there, hey? Yeah. So that's the shared screen. So Simon, I hope you don't mind, but I'm kind of bringing it up for everyone to see. You're okay with that?
Fine.
Cool.
Yep.
Now let's see what you've got here. So we've got, you've compared the altitude 1,000 to 2,000 now. And then you've kind of created your own profile on that. Good. There we go. Chris, you want to weigh in on this? Anything you're kind of looking at with this? There's no log to Simon's. He's just created the profile and he's kind of just looking for something on it.
So that's the profile you had.
Yep.
And what Simon has done is he's put a lot more energy in prior to colour change.
Yes.
And then he's gone very slow, steady. The rate of rise should be falling very, very evenly on that. Yep. Just a very steady fall off.
Yeah.
And if we compare that to the default, because I'm often doing that, essentially a similar amount of energy going into the default, but cutting off earlier. Now, I think what we're seeing with the default is trying to go darker, you're getting into ashy notes up here.
Yes.
So by essentially that's the default, except that we're turning the corner earlier.
Yes.
And so that would let you get to darker
a lot later.
Yeah.
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 So essentially, first crack would be delayed out a lot longer, and you'd have that chance to develop a lot more flavour later in the roast. But you've put tons of energy in early.
Yeah.
But then comparing it to your altitude, there's a lot of energy going in early.
Yeah.
And so this is the area where, if you were putting a low density bean in there, you'd definitely see tipping in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So did anyone hear that from Chris? Are we all following? So Simon, if you notice, we've got the kind of the now profile or the RTD profile for their 1,500 to 2,000. You're obviously using your Peruvian blend with this, eh? Am I correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Excellent. Now, what we've done is Chris has also turned on the default profile, so the comparison to the default profile, and he's turned on the rate of rise. That's your green line coming down here. We see the rate of rise. We see that kind of very steady, steep decrease. That's telling us with your profile, Simon, if we have to compare it to the default and then compare it to the now profile, the RTD profile, is you've put a heck of a lot more energy in at the start to get us to that 2-minute point, which is a turnaround and then going into your color change, which will kind of be around this area here on that. Now, flattening the curve off like this, okay, and we can see that in the required rate of rise. We can see that we've kind of, from this area here, we're looking at kind of 904 at 227. Now let's look at this 904 over here. You can see that we're moving down here to 7.6, 7.3, 7.2. So we're really flattening it out a lot towards the end. Now, what you're going to do is, I mean, you've put here, this line here, you've put in your first crack. That should be your...
what's my expected first crack?
Your expected first crack, absolutely. And if we can look at that, just kind of have a look at that. That expected first crack is sitting at about 814. So you've really extended that first crack out. You've pushed it out, you know. Your recommended time is 11:16. So you've really started to push this roast. Now what you've done is you've teed it up quite nicely. You've teed it up here to have a lot of energy leading into that mallard phase and then onto your first crack. Chris is absolutely right. If you look at this and you're using a low altitude coffee, so if you're using something like a Brazil, you're using a coffee that is kind of 1,200 to 1,500, you'll look at actually tipping or scorching, a possibility of tipping and scorching the beans in this first phase here. So with this profile, you've got to be very mindful of what you're trying to achieve through it. The first thing is you're applying a lot of heat into it at the start, which could equal that tipping in your coffee if you're not using the right altitude for this. What I'm interested to see from this roast, Simon, is what effect this flattening here before first crack, what effect this flattening in your Maillard phase, in your browning, in your development phase, what effect that is going to have on flavor. Now, what you might be looking there, what you might be looking to do is, and I'm just looking at your zone that you put in. I think you put in a late zone. If I'm right in saying that.
Well, I was trying to, I don't know, I guess you'll probably see from the numbers there what I was trying to do. But I was basically trying to put in something to counter that, that dip we were seeing that Chris pointed out around first crack, where, the beans pop open and absorb quite a lot of, I suppose it's latent heat at that point. And there's sort of a dip in temperature at that point. So I was trying to sort of anticipate that and put in a bit of extra energy to counter it.
Yeah, correct. So you've done that at the 850 mark.
What have I got there? So
there we go, 750 to 820.
So yeah,
perfect. So I mean, you're sitting with your expected there at 814. So you've gone kind of 20 seconds before,
thereabouts. Yeah.
Yep. There we go. And then you
forward a little bit after.
Then you've pulled that a little bit after. Now, what you're trying to do is you're trying to effectively stop that dip. So that's what you're looking to do. In saying that, though, however, it'll be interesting to see once you roast this if we will actually get a decrease in dip, purely because of the flattened curve. So what that flattened curve might do is that flattened curve might still provide a dip. And the reason why it might still provide a dip is you're actually flattening it out. You're actually losing heat throughout that flattened curve, if that makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see if the zone A number 1 works. If it doesn't work, we could be looking at just pulling that curve up slightly, just to push a little bit more heat into the beans come first crack. If that makes sense. Okay, makes sense on that, Chris?
Yeah. Because that essentially with that very straight line after your curve, you've got a low rate of rise quite early, and that basically means there's more time for the temperature on the inside of the bean to even up with the temperature on the outside. And usually we're trying to drive more of a gradient across the bean, keeping the outside hotter, driving heat consistently, having heat flowing consistently into the middle, to overcome the first crack energy.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's evened out too much, then the first crack just sucks the energy out of the whole bean, and so it will be interesting to see how it roasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on your specific bean, hey, Simon. It'll be interesting to see how the Peru actually adjusts to this. Excellent. Where are you gonna be roasting kind of today? You're gonna roast today or tomorrow?
Well, after the feedback, I'm tempted to give this a go now. I might be able to palm the other beans off onto someone that normally buys supermarket coffee. So whatever I roasted last week will still be amazing for them. Because having that feedback now, I'm keen to give this a go. So with that first bit, you reckon basically as long as it can just be as steep as I like, but not with tipping. So like if I get tipping, I'd need to knock it back a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Simon. If you get tipping, what I would do is I bring that first 2 minutes, basically, is I bring that profile curve down slightly. Now, what that'll mean is then you don't want to flatten the rest of the curve, because that'll just extend the entire roast out. I would then start to tilt that curve back up, just to give us more energy coming through the profile towards first crack. Yeah, but in saying that, if you're really working with that high altitude coffee, you should not experience tipping if you're working with that high altitude coffee. So this profile becomes very set on a specific altitude. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't try a Brazil through this, for example. You'll be very underwhelmed with it. Yeah. If that kind of makes sense. The key behind this is, you're working on a 26.9% development, and that's going from your expected first crack. So the key behind this profile is when you roast it is to really get the correct kind of first crack, so you projected that it should be around about that 814.
So on first roast, I'd need to log that and then maybe adjust that.
Absolutely, 100%. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we could see with that flattening, we could see the first crack not be at 814, but more along the lines of 830, 845. So it could be pushed out slightly. Okay. So don't go crazy and think to yourself, oh, it's 814. I'm hearing one pop, for example. That's my first crack. It's not. You'll probably find that your first crack will come somewhere around about the 830 mark. I'm predicting, obviously. I'm not, I can't be accurate with it. Yeah. But if it is, don't be too scared with it. What it'll do is it'll bring your percentage down to about a 24%, which is within that space. You then have to then make the decision whether that's dark enough for you, full enough and bold enough for you, or you'll just have to push that profile, that recommended end, to probably about a 4 to give you that profile that you're looking for. Okay?
Yep. Okay.
Cool.
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
It'll also be interesting for you in this section of the roast. It'll be interesting for you in this section of the roast with that increased heat to see if your temperature sits on the profile line or slightly above the profile line. Okay. Looking at it here, you'll probably find that it will sit on the profile line, come here, and it might actually even increase slightly above the profile line, but then the roaster will work hard in bringing it back down again. So you might have a little bit of a curve here, and that's just the roaster trying its damnedest to give you what you want here. Okay. Versus if we look at the altitude 1500 to 2000, we'll see that the mean temperature will kind of push here, and then it will give this almost dip back into the curve, Yeah. So just be interesting. Don't rack your brains and kill yourself with that. Obviously, if we're sitting under the profile, so we're sitting here, and then we're only meeting here, we might actually be losing a bit of temperature. The roaster might be struggling to get up to that. But let's hope that we have that nice tee up. Okay. Roasted. Let's check. Yeah. Awesome. Are you happy with that, Simon?
Okay. Yeah, that's great feedback. Thanks for that, guys.
Excellent. Now, Nick, do you mind if I just pull yours up quick?
Yep, no problem.
Great. We're over here. Okay, so Nick, what I'm going to do, Nick, is do you think we should just pull up the log?
Yep.
Because we'll be able to take your profile up through the log, Nick. So you'll find that loading up now. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove let's just see what you've done here. So that's default. That's the altitude now, basically. Okay. Perfect. Okay, cool. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear that compare off there. So that's your default there.
So he's taken your altitude now and pushed it up to push more energy into the early part of the roast.
Yeah. So that looks pretty neat, eh? You're working on a 25% development here, Nick?
That's what I'm aiming for. But yeah, the first crack time on that was a little low, though I think I might have pushed the button a bit quick on it, maybe.
One of these, isn't it?
Sort of a discussion that Chris had earlier was first crack is really a statistical thing. If I'm not really paying attention, sometimes you hear that first crack and you kind of race and press it, and then you realise it might have been an outlier bean going off. And then there's nothing for another 15 seconds or so, and then you get a cluster of them. So I've started ignoring the first solitary cracks and then waiting until I get 2 or 3 in rapid succession before I tag that as first crack.
Okay. No, that's perfect. What you'll find is sometimes you get it wrong and you'll kind of, on the roaster, you'll mark first crack, and then almost like 10 seconds later or 13 seconds later, you're like, no, this is actually first crack. Go back and remark it on the roaster You know, so purposely go back and remark first crack. What it'll do is it'll start the development off at 0 again, but effectively you can get a more accurate kind of development on it. Now, what's interesting here, Nick, is, I mean, if we look at your first crack, we can see that you really have no huge dip. There's no huge dip in it.
But he's telling us that his first crack is probably wrong.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you
That'd
think
be first crack,
that's first crack?
Yeah.
So if that is actually at 8.
Sorry, are you sharing the screen there? Because we're just seeing you guys.
Sorry about that, man. Yes, sorry, guys. That's my fault.
I've got it in front of me here, but
sorry, guys. I'm getting excited. Sorry. There we go.
So what we're talking about here, we've got looking at the rate of rise, and one of the things we need to know when we're comparing these things is we've got a 20-second smoothing and a 5 times multiplier going, and that is allowing us to, what we're really interested in is this bit down here where the rate of rise takes our absolute minimum at 8 minutes 19 or 8 minutes 20, thereabouts. And so we're picking that could actually be, or that we might say the beginning of this practice here at 8:10.
I do.
So we'll pop up here and click on the profile at 8:10, which is the temperature of 212 degrees, say.
Yeah.
So we can run over to our logs color change, our logs first crack, and we can actually change that and decide that no, we've revised that to 212.0, and that now gives us a percent of 19.5, which is exactly what I would be roasting my coffee to for the way I drink it.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Nick?
Yep, it all comes down to when you pick that first crack, isn't it? So quite often what I do is if I think of, when I hear the first crack or what I think is first crack, I mark it on the roaster, and then I listen a bit more, and if I'm not getting a cluster of cracks at that point, I kind of just manually eyeball it and see, wait until I get that, and then I amend it afterwards. So I kind of keep an eye on the temperature, and if I think it's gone at 206, but then I get a cluster a bit later on, I'll sort of go, oh no, that was 208, and kind of manually put that in to the KAFFELOGIC Studio afterwards to see what it was like. So
yeah,
I don't amend it on the actual roaster, I do it in KAFFELOGIC Studio afterwards.
Yeah. So, and when I think about that, 212 is probably quite high. So actually you probably would have been hearing cracks earlier than that.
You would have been hearing cracks way earlier than that, Joe.
Yeah. So maybe it would be more like
2 and 9.
As I said, it tends to be, I think, between 207 and 209 is what I usually get on those beans.
And at 209, that would give you exactly 24% on this profile, which is really sweet. Really.
That's really good.
On the spot.
Yeah. I think what's key is, Nick, is, I mean, you've really teed the coffee up nicely. So, if we look at this beginning part, this beginning phase, what you've done is you can see around this 2-minute mark, you can see how the temperature and the profile have kind of added into each other.
Yep.
And that's key. I mean, we look at it there, we've got a slight little jump under, which I'm not too concerned about, when we're looking at what's that, half a degree, maybe, about 1 degree difference in profile to temp, which, I mean, it's not a threat at all. It's giving. What that's saying is, I mean, if you wanted to get that line above, there's 2 things you could do. Is you could effectively kind of this beginning part of the roast, you could steepen that up slightly. Not as aggressive as what Simon's done, but you could steepen it up slightly.
That might be counterproductive.
It could be counterproductive,
because what you're seeing here is the roaster is bringing the line back onto the curve. That's a little bit of overshoot.
sure.
So if you took it further off the curve, it would probably overshoot even more when it comes back.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't be worried about that at all. I'm more interested in what's happening up here, which is
just after it goes around that slight corner, it drifts above for a bit before.
There's usually a drift above between 180 and 190, and that is because the exothermic reaction starts. So down here to the left of that point, it's sitting slightly below the line, but in my assessment of it, that's actually following the line.
It is, absolutely. That's why I wouldn't worry about it.
This is the point I would say it comes off the line here because of exothermy, and the roaster's pulling it back on. And whether or not you want to do something about that, you could do something about that in here with a negative boost.
Yes, you could.
Yeah. But I don't know, would you need to, Wayne?
No, you wouldn't. So Nick, on here, I mean, if we look at that now, I mean, above the line, I would always say I would want you to have more energy. I would want to use that exothermic action in the bean to push through first crack. Yeah. Because, Nick, if you had to add a negative boost, if you had to, and I've done this because my mind in the early stages of KAFFELOGIC has been stay to the curve, because when you grow up as a classic roaster and you're using drum roasters, the curve is almost gospel. You know, you're always trying to stay to the curve. You're always trying to stick to the curve. So my first part of KAFFELOGIC development was I was trying to get my temperature on that curve. What I found is I found going into first crack, that drop after first crack, that drop and then flick would be astronomical. It would actually give me negative flavor in the coffee because effectively what I'm doing here is I'm using the energy that the coffee is giving to prime me for first crack, you know?
Whereas if you put the negative boost in, yes, you're following the line, but you're actually fighting the coffee.
Absolutely. You're fighting the coffee. You're losing that energy because that's effectively what you're doing. You're saying to the bean, hey, listen, I don't want you to have that exothermic charge that you should have, you know? It's almost like that spring of the elastic. You don't want it to have it, you know? And that's effectively what bringing from this 194 degrees to about 206, 207, if you were to challenge that, if you were to bring that down to the curve, in my opinion, we wouldn't get this phase looking as sweet as it looks. So we would get a far greater dip here. We would almost dip under the line. And then as roasters, we would then try and push it up. So then try and do whatever we could do to push it up. Instead of doing what you're doing here is just tracking it above the line. There's more than enough exothermic charge in it. When we hit that first crack, and we can see it as a dip here, we can see it as that dip, but it's not affecting the bean like it should. It's actually probably the better way to look at it, where we don't have that dip, we don't have that flick, which just tells me that I'm using the bean capacity, I'm using that exothermic charge to power through that. Now, what that's going to do for you from a taste perspective, have you tried this, by the way, Nick?
Yep, I've been, it's in my grinder at the moment, so it's what I've been drinking the last few days.
And how are you finding it? How are you finding that flavor? You find that it's just popping with flavor, full of flavor?
Yeah, look, it's good. Those Colombian beans that I've been using, I've tended to be on the default KAFFELOGIC scale targeting more 3 or 3.3, and so this is one with a lighter roast, but again looking for something I can do with espresso, so I don't want to take it too light. Okay. But it seems quite good in the espresso machine so far. So it's my first iteration of a lighter profile, so it was kind of the first punt at it.
Right.
So I have a bit more of a play past that.
I would like to think that phase that you have here of zero dip and zero flick is kind of giving you a little bit more texture, a little bit more flavor in that espresso, you know? So what it's saying to you is I can still give you flavor, the flavor that you require. I almost don't need you to roast me darker, you know?
Yeah.
I've got that balanced flavor that you're giving me kind of, and that's all stemming from the roast. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, like I quite like the lighter roast I've discovered. My wife prefers darker, so I think I'm going to end up with 2 grinders at home, but you know, as needs must. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, I started off on the default KAFFELOGIC profile and just kind of moved up and down the temperature scale on that to see what I did, and then yeah, with these Colombian beans, they're relatively easy for me to get, so they're sort of my go-to thing for roasting.
I say get yourself a 0 retention grinder and then sell your other grinder on Trade Me rather than run 2.
Yeah, I
agree.
saw one of those the other day, something that's made out of the UK. I'm not sure what grinders are like on those 0 retention ones. I've had it's one I've had with my Rocket since 2000, and it's had a pretty good life, but it's still going, so you know, I'm loath to retire it.
No, fantastic. I mean, I would yeah, listen, Nick, I would absolutely agree with Chris. Get yourself a just get yourself a 0 retention grinder. The nice ones you want to look at is maybe the compacts, or maybe the Vegas. I don't know what they branded here. They could be compact or Vega, but there's a couple of nice options there, little home options there, which give you zero kind of hold, which is nice.
I've got a hand grinder, but that's a bit of work for if you're doing sort of 14, 15 grams of coffee. Yeah, it's a bit of work through that, bit easier obviously for a pour over.
Yeah. Look, Nick, what's nice about this profile is, I mean, if we look down at the bottom here, we really haven't even hit a steady line. We haven't hit rock bottom, which means that, you know, if your wife likes it slightly darker as well, slightly higher roast profile, we could still get into a lot of meat here with the coffee. I mean, if we look at it, you could probably extend that quite nicely for a kind of medium to high, medium to dark roast profile and get good flavor out of it. You know,
again, I think I set that as a default of 2, which is what I would have roasted that at.
cool.
So yeah, I might try and push it out to sort of 2.5 or something and see what that does.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely do it. Yeah, I mean, if we look at that, Chris, if we look at the end there's no real big shakes and moves. I mean, the beans,
it's incredibly stable.
Yeah, I mean, the beans actually giving us a lot. You know, normally at the end of that profile, we'd kind of see these wiggles where the beans just saying, "I've got no more to give you," you know.
Yep.
Whereas the amount of energy you've put in, you've absorbed that energy, given out that energy, but you've still got a little bit more to give there from a bean perspective. You know, when you look at the beans, Nick, do you find that the beans have really cracked a little bit? Have they popped? Have they cracked? Is there like a visual crack on it? Or are you seeing that they're quite...
You know, they look good. If I split one in half, there's no indication that they're not roasted all the way through. They look pretty good, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good roast. I mean, I'd like to try it and kind of roast it and see what other coffees can do with it, you know?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of others here that I might pop in and see. There's a Nicaraguan, which I'll give that a crack on that same profile and see what it does.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd love to see how the Nicaraguan reacts to that. You know,
okay.
I'd love to. Simon as well. I'd love to see how like something like the Nicaragua reacts to your super high profile. You know, because what it might do with the Nicaragua should respond differently to both profiles. You should have Simon with yours, that huge kind of fruit pop coming out. And with yours, Nick, you know, we're bringing that acidity down. We're almost flattening that acidity, not flattening it out. It's the wrong term, but we're massaging it. You know, we're balancing it out. You know, with a little bit more body. Where Simon's will kind of just kick it off. We should get a lot more acidity. That's at that same roast profile where you're taking it not necessarily medium to high, but you're really teetering on kind of light, medium to medium. You know. For pour overs and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how these profiles work. But all good. I mean, is there anyone else that's got a profile that wants to kind of share it with us, or? Shaz, did you manage to do any form of profiling? Justine?
Sorry,
No,
I had a look this morning. I had a look at your 3 this morning, and then I understood how you meant that they weren't ideal roasts. But that's as far as I got.
No, it's fine, Shaz. I mean, let's keep that for kind of tomorrow and Friday. You know, where we say if you do have a bit of time, Shaz. If you don't, it's fine. I mean, have a look at those profiles over the weekend when you've maybe got a little bit more time. You know.
Yeah,
and
I'm really keen.
Yeah, just stick them on the forum. You know, maybe Nick and Simon, if you don't mind me asking, you know, is it okay if Shaz could take your profiles that you put on the forum and kind of, you know, have those starting profiles, but also have your profiles and kind of, you know, compare them all and kind of try and map something between them, Shaz? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would
Nick,
help.
Simon, if you're okay with...
That's fine. All care and no responsibility, though, if it, you know, with a pile of ash.
Don't worry about it, Simon. Don't worry about it. Chris carries all the responsibility. It's all good. We're all fine with that.
We'll send you a bill for the coffee.
Yeah. No, I mean, okay, cool. Justine, on your side, did you manage to play around with them? It'll be interesting, Justine, to see how Simon's profile works, or Simon and Nick's profile work on your higher altitude decaf and on the, I think you've got a PNG that you're roasting, and to see how that works on the darker kind of set of profiles.
So no, I didn't get a chance to do more than have a look at it and delete some points. Yeah, I'll grab those if you upload them.
Yeah, great. So they are on the forum, Justine. So I'd probably say for you with your decaf, I'd probably say go and grab Simon's off the profile, off the forum, and maybe give that a go as your decaf and your PNG, and let's see how that comes out. You know.
Cool.
Now, we think about wrapping up for today. We haven't necessarily followed our schedule of topics this week perfectly. It's been a bit of an up and down week for us with the business having a range of meetings here in Christchurch this week. So I'll just make sure come next week that anything that's on our schedule for topics for this week that we haven't maybe covered off, I will make sure we cover that off in our sessions next week. We'll be back on schedule.
100%.
Plus, we're also going to try and bring in some guest presenters, so we might have just little gaps in the schedule where we slot some others. But other than that, we are working our way through the topics. So rest assured, we are covering off everything.
Yes. Everyone happy with that?
Mm-hmm. All good.
Cool. So tomorrow, I think tomorrow's session, we doing tomorrow's session? Or we're a bit tied up?
No, we'll be doing a session tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll do an open question and answer session tomorrow.
Okay. We can do a question and answer session, and maybe we can just get into a bit of the topics on the list that we can cover today. We could just...
Potentially.
Yeah.
Although I'm just sort of bearing in mind that if people are specifically looking for Monday and Wednesday to cover those topics,
Yes.
I'll just make sure that they do get covered on Mondays and Wednesdays as well.
No problem.
Would you be able to record the Q&A? Because I might not be able to make it.
Yep, we can record it for you. No worries.
Absolutely, Justine. Yep. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. If you have any questions, Justine, just, you know, and you want to ask a few questions tomorrow, and you're not going to make it, just pop me a text message or send me an email or whatever, and we'll just ask it on behalf of you. Yeah. Yep. If you're happy with that. Cool.
Sweet. Okay. Oh, well, look, thanks, everyone. It's been really, really fantastic. Working through real profiles that people are working on.
Yeah, geez, it's fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thanks for doing it. And we look forward to seeing more profiles. We look forward to seeing more of you guys coming, you know, through and trying them when you have time.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you later in the week.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Hey, John, you want to go on another meeting? You want to log in for another meeting?
Still here.
Okay. Okay, cool. Should we end it, Chris? Happy?